So for a lot of these, I would draw a little sketch off to the side if you need to. A visual just helps a ton. But if you can tell how it shifted without doing that, you don't have to draw a picture. For example, using words like left or right, how did this shift? Left 9. So the center, follow me on this, went left 9. So your center is now at -9. You just have to put x equals because it is a vertical line. A lot of the ones on the front of this paper are multiple choice questions, which people are sometimes happy about, but you have to remember 3 of the choices are wrong, so you got to be really careful. All right, vertex. Let's use our imagination. This went right 5 up 8. Look, if you go right 5 up 8, what's your point? 5, 8. Good. Perfect. All right, what is the range? I'm going to draw a little picture for this. Using words like up or down, what direction did this shift? Good. Go up 4, put a point. And it's also facing upside down. How do I know that? Because of the negative. Just that is a basic graph. Like I didn't graph a whole ton of specific points. It was just real quick. So for your range, you're going to go downwards to upwards. It would be from where to where? Good. Negative infinity has to get a parenthesis. 4, it's a question, isn't it? Does 4 get a bracket or a parenthesis? Good, because there's actually a point there. All right, for this one, I would do the y-intercept first because all you do is plug in 0. So if you plug in 0 for those x's, what's left? 0, 3. Hey, Miss Cole, is it always going to be that last number? Yeah. Okay. Do you remember we were talking about that with the word problems, initial height that like something was thrown from? Sort of, I remember it was like a weekend ago, but we got it. All right. For x, you're going to have to set it equal to 0 and factor it. All right. So x squared would be x times x. How does 3 split? Get 3 and 1. And then do your symbols, pluses or minuses or one of each, or what do you think? They're both plus. So if you set those equal to 0, and you're going to get 2 answers, what do you get for the first one? Good. So it's -3, 0, and -1, 0. Good. I think that's the trickiest one for multiple choice because, again, 3 of the answers are wrong. So you got to be really careful. I would draw a sketch for this next one, too. Using words like up, down, left, right, how did it move? Down 1, left 5. So there's our vertex. That's the center. Down 1, left 5. And is it right side up or upside down? Good, because of the negative. So it's going to look like this. Again, it's not perfect. It's just like a visual. It's just so that you don't have to use your imagination. You can actually see it. Now it says decreasing. I want you guys to just watch. What is the graph doing for this first part? All right, increasing. So we don't want that part. We want this part of the graph. So it decreases from where? -5. And then if you want to label your ends, it's from -5 to positive infinity because it's left to right. This side would be negative infinity. This side's positive infinity. What I get all the time is, but Miss Cole, the arrow points down. That's end behavior. All right, this is left to right. So it is from -5 to positive infinity. You got to be careful with that. It's left to right. All right, relative extreme just means maximum or minimum. We're going to have to complete the square for this one. So write down the first 2 terms, x squared plus 8x, divide by 2 and square. So what is 8 divided by 2 going to give you? 4 squared, 16. Perfect. Give it a hug. Now, this is a little tricky. You have to turn a 16 back into a -7. Think of your number line. You have to turn 16 back into a -7. So what are you going to have to subtract off to go that whole way? Is it 23? 23. Count on your fingers. That's why you got them. All right, so that's going to be blank squared minus 23. What goes in the blank? Yep, x plus 4. So it's going to be negative 23 at x equals, oh, which direction did it go? Left. So it's negative 23 at x equals negative 4. It went left 4, down 23, if you want to visualize. Left 4, down 23. But is it a relative maximum or a relative minimum? Well, think about what the graph looks like. Do you see a negative out front here? No. That means it's facing right side up like this. So that center point is a what? Relative minimum. So this is relative minimum. So this was our answer. That was probably the toughest one we've done so far. You had to actually complete the square and you had to think about which direction the graph was facing. But if you even think about which way the graph is facing, if two of the choices say minimum and two of them say maximum, do you get how you can narrow it down to a 50-50 shot just based on that? So, just think about which way the graph goes and that'll help you. All right, end behavior. Limit x goes to negative infinity of the function. Limit x goes to positive infinity of the function. So your left end and your right end. And for a parabola, they're both going to go the same way. Where are both arrows headed? Good. Why? Facing down. It's going like this. There's a negative in front of the graph. Now 8, you can sort of draw whatever you want as long as it's a parabola and it goes through those 2 points. So we want to have solutions means your x-intercepts. So we want to go through the x-axis at negative 3 and positive 5. You can face it upwards or downwards. It doesn't matter, but it has to be a U shape and it has to go through those 2 points. All you got to do. I always get someone that wiggles it around some more. It's the test on parabolas, guys. Every graph should be a U shape. So don't make it any more complicated. Keep it simple. Right here. Yep, you just want it to go through those 2 points and be a U shape. All right, this is like your quiz 2.0. We're just gonna do factoring and completing the square. So draw your 2 parentheses. You need numbers that multiply together to be 12. What do you think? 3 and 4. So 3x and 4x. Now I know these ones work because I walked around and helped people, but if 3 and 4 didn't work, what else could you try? 6 and 2, or weirdly, if that didn't work, there is one other option. 12 and 1. That would be really weird though to put a 12 in there. All right, now I need numbers that multiply together to be 6, 2 and 3. Now it does matter where they go. For the sake of time, I'm going to tell you the 2 goes here and the 3 goes here. But watch, I'll walk you through it. If you multiply the outsides, what do they give you? 9x, and the insides 8x. I need those to add or subtract to be 1, which they do. Now, what do I want for my symbols? 9 needs to be positive, so a positive here. 3 times 3 would be positive, and then negative 8. 4 times negative 2. So 9 minus 8 equals 1. We remember factoring from last year? You need to, all right? Don't stop there. It is a sad day if you don't get your answers. I have to take off points if you don't actually finish it up. Now you can write as much as you want. At this level, I usually try to talk people through getting the answer without having to write anything else. If you set this first one equal to 0, what would you get? Oh, careful. 2/3, good, perfect. And then this one, negative 3/4. You would subtract the 3, divide by 4. Cool, good, that went well. All right, this one, before I can factor it, I have to evacuate, get everybody on one side, make it equal 0. Also, you want to be clever about what order you put it in. Where should the minus 8x go? In the middle. Now you can only get away with this next step if it equals 0. That's why 0 is such a great number. What do you notice all these divide by? 4. You can only get away with this if it equals 0, though. If you did this problem differently, don't erase too much because you might still have the right answer. There's another way you can do it. I just do that to make all the numbers smaller. So what are we left with if we divide them all by 4? Minus 2x. Good. And it just makes, it's like reducing a fraction. It makes all the numbers littler and it's just easier to deal with smaller numbers. So then we're going to split it. It'll be x and x. And one will be positive, one will be negative. I do that last though. So what are the numbers? Get 3 and 1 to get a -2. Good, perfect. I always do the numbers and then the symbols just to like do one thing at a time. But I mean, it depends on how it was taught to you, what you feel comfortable doing. All right. And then when you set them equal to 0, you get 3 and -1. And again, you might have gotten that doing it a little bit differently. That's fine. If you didn't divide everything by the 4, that's okay. Again, I just do that to make all the numbers smaller. Now these ones say completing the square. It's also a sad day when I have to take off points for not direction following. Please make sure you read. They're bold, italicized, and underlined. Okay, make sure you read the directions. Plus, you know how when I pass out a test, I go through all the directions with you? Like I'm going to say it, but I know somebody will not listen to me, so just be careful. So you write down the first 2 terms, divide by 2 and square. What are we going to add on to this one? I heard somebody whisper it back there. 25. And that means you're going to add 25 to the other side as well. Plus 25 plus 25. The whole point of doing that is you can write it as blank squared. What's going to go in the blank? X minus 5 equals, well, that's going to be negative. What is that? Negative what? Negative 20. As a heads up, the answer is going to be imaginary. How do I know that? Negative. All right, now what? What's our next step? Good. When you put a square root, what are you going to have to put? Plus and minus. Now, when you split this, the first step sounds violent. You take out an I. That's the -1 part. And then how would you split 20? 4 and 5. So we'll get x minus 5 equals plus and minus. What's that going to boil down to there? This part's 2, this part's I. 2i square root of 5. And then what's your last step? Yeah, plus 5. Good. So it'll be 5 plus and minus all the rest of that mess, which is a great answer. Welcome to recalculus. Now, if you're a good noticer in this next one, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. What do you notice about all those numbers in number 12? Good. So if you divide everything by 3, which again, what's the only reason you can get away with that? Equals, good, you guys listen to me. You're so quiet, but you listen to me. It's fantastic. So that'll be x squared minus 2x minus 6 equals 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. So that's why you can get away with that. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we did in number 11. Write down the first 2 terms, leave a gap. And you'll move that 6 to the other side. This one's a little tricky. What do you add to both sides for this one? 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and then 1 squared is 1. People do forget about 1, and I totally understand why that happens. It's weird, because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, as many times as you want, still 1. So what goes in the blank for that one? Good. X minus 1, and then this side would be 7. And then just 2 more steps to finish it up. Square root. So it'll be plus and minus square root of 7. That one doesn't split, which is nice. Just leave it alone. And then, so what's your final answer? Good. And I said answer, but it's actually two answers. 1 plus square root of 7 and 1 minus square root of 7. And again, just to tie it all together, look back at number, humor me. I want you to know what's going on. If you graphed this parabola, would it even touch the x-axis? No, because the answers are magic. Good, perfect. All right, and then this is like your quiz 2.0. Ooh, except I threw an odd number in here. I gave you one that has a fraction. Do you remember halves and fourths? Halves and fourths, guys. Halves and fourths. All right, f of x equals, write down the first two terms. I got to throw one that's got a fraction in it, guys. You'll be okay. I'm going to take 5 off to the side and just watch me do this. Just watch. I'm going to divide it by 2 and then square. Divide by 2 and square. The rules didn't change, it's just a fraction. It'll be 25 fourths. How'd he get that so quick? I didn't say you're not smart, but let's slow it down a little bit. It's 5 squared and 2 squared. All right, give that a hug. Now you have to turn a 25 fourths back into a 3. So here's the $1 million question. And I would just write it right next to it. How many fourths is 3? How'd you get 12? 3 times 4. Okay. So we have to turn 25 fourths back into 12 fourths. So we're going to have to subtract off some fourths. 13 fourths. 12 minus, or excuse me, 25 minus 13 gives you 12. Do you see how much writing off to the side I did though? Like note to self. I feel like a lot of people refuse to do that because they get embarrassed that they had to write a note or whatever. That's literally your thoughts. That's like your brain thinking. All right, and then your final step, f of x equals, you're going to write blank squared minus 13 fourths. And if you've written off to the side, the number that needs to go in there is written on the paper somewhere already. What goes in the blank? Good. X plus 5 halves. It's right here. You wrote it off to the side. Halves and fourths. This number should be halves. This number should be fourths. If you get anything other than halves and fourths, you have done goofed.